Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike here at Game from Scratch, and today we are talking about the Lumberyard game engine. Now, Lumberyard started life as a fork of CryEngine, CryEngine 3.4, I believe, and basically Amazon bought the rights to it. They have complete source code access to it. They gave it all to you as a developer. The only caveat there is you have to use their networking solution if you use anything. So you got to use AWS services or run your own servers. Other than that, it is completely free to use. And Lumberyard has had some teething pains to grow up. In fact, if you go and look at the last version, Lumberyard 1.24, I gave up. I was going to do a video on it, and it took me about 9 hours. I could get the default to work. I couldn't create my own project. I couldn't add a gem. Everything about it just ticked me off. And here I am covering Lumberyard 1.25, the next release after that, and there's a good reason for that. Basically, I was in contact with a number of the Lumberyard engineers, or a couple of them, I should say, and they took my complaints to heart. So they've been looking at making the onboarding process better. The onboarding process basically being that part where you get up and running with the engine. And from the very beginning, Lumberyard has been a complicated engine to get up and running. But in the last couple releases, just getting it to run at all was virtually impossible. The nice thing is they have gone a long way in this release. On top of that, there's a number of nice improvements here. The one thing you're going to notice immediately, if you've used Lumberyard in the past, is this user interface is completely new. They've just launched UI 2.0, and it is really nice and clean. I got to give them props there. It is a nice experience. On top of that, it works well with 4K monitors, and it also works very well with multiple displays. So kudos on them for updating the user interface. They're moving further and further away from their CryEngine roots. Another thing that we've got going on here is we now have this player in place. So this is a new example of a full-blown, fully animated player character from the sample project. And if you want to come in here, you can check out a couple of other things. For example, Script Canvas. Script Canvas is the kind of up-and-coming visual programming language they use here. Your logic in Lumberyard is either written using C++, you can extend it using something called gems as well, which are kind of like DLLs or plugins. You can use Lua, or you can use Script Canvas. Now, here is the Script Canvas controlling this new character model that is added to their sample. And you can see here also the UI has been updated. So we've got a better UI experience in general. I can dock it in place like you see right there. I can maximize it. I can spread things around, or I can just boom. So there we go. So here is the new Script Canvas. As you can see, it's a very visual looking flow graph kind of thing. If you've worked with blueprints, you've got an idea what's going on here. Basically, these kind of visual programming interfaces are becoming more and more common here. So here is the character controller. Here is the camera controller. All right, so we got a bit of a lag going on here. All right, so there we go. The controllable character controller for that character we just looked at. It's a pretty advanced example going on here, but you can see kind of how it works here. We've got visual graphs as well for controlling the animations on her. So you can open those up, see how you work, change between the various different states of various different animation controllers. You can also see this UI has gotten a facelift as well. Again, it is nice, much nicer to work with for multiple displays. They have done a great job in that regard. So that is kind of the idea here. Let's just move things around. The performance is solid. I'm running this on a 2070 GPU. Let's just get this outside. You can see what the engine is capable of. Again, CryEngine has always been a pretty beautiful engine. So here we are outside, and you can see more and more of it in action right here. So CryEngine. Well, CryEngine was the renderer behind this, so that's why I'm going to mix the two up. But Lumberyard has taken all of the beauty of CryEngine and run with it. But it is nice to see more and more with every release, and especially with UI 2.0, that we had more of a convergence. So you don't have more of those CryEngine roots there. It's becoming more and more of its own game engine. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's also possible to create your own project now, which was really a pain in the butt up until this point. So I'm going to show you that right now. So one of the downsides, one of the things I really don't like about both CryEngine and Lumberyard, but I think it's just so intrinsic to the way the engines work, is basically you can only have one project active at a time. So what I'm going to do here is go into the project configurator. And in this particular example, I'm going to showcase this is a project that I created myself. Now, the big thing here is when I did that, so I'm going to set it as the default. So next time I run the Lumberyard editor, we'll get my newly created project. But the key thing here is what I've found in the past is when I started and I download Lumberyard, I would create my own project, and I had about a 50-50 chance that it would fail. But then what I would do is I'd come in and I would enable a gem. Now, gems are really important to CryEngine. Basically, these are extensions. There's all kinds of things here. You say things like, obviously, Amazon integration, things like game lift support, but it goes on from that. Camera support, a lot of the core things you're seeing, they're actually enabled already. So camera frameworks, cloud stuff, all that stuff can all be enabled as gems. Same with a lot of the CryEngine legacy stuff is also enabled as gems. Again, you can think of a gem as like a plugin or an extension. And there's things like you want to add gesture support and all of that kind of stuff, head-mounted displays for virtual reality, in-app purchases, all that stuff is implemented as gems. So what I did is when I created a new project, I want to showcase one of the new features that CryEngine, sorry, I gotta stop doing that. Lumberyard 1.25 just added to the mix. And that is, if we scroll down all the way down here, white box. Now, what it's done in the past is I've come in, I've enabled a gem, I've turned it on, and I've tried to build my code, and it fails every single time. I've used Lumberyard since I think 1.19 maybe. It's just been a pain in the butt. In this particular case, it just works. So I created my new project, I added the new white box gem, and we're good to go. So let me go ahead and we'll fire that guy up. And this can take a couple of seconds to load up. Now, the other thing I'm going to showcase here, okay, once that stops binging, is I'm going to showcase the old UI. So what we just saw was the new and updated user interface. I'm going to show you how to switch between the two. So here we just launched this guy up. So here you see Enable UI 2.0 preview is on. So here you see what it looks like. The idea of Lumberyard, the new updated user interface. Let's turn that back off. And we got to do a shutdown. Now, the worst part is, and I don't understand this, it doesn't automatically restart it for you. Not a really huge deal, but that is one of those things that I sat there for like a minute waiting for it to come. Right? Oh, you're not going to restart. So, anyways, here is the old interface. So there is, if you want to check out the new UI 2.0 stuff, you can toggle it with the Welcome to Lumberyard. The preview is available right here. So you can see here is what the old UI looked like. It's nicely spaced out, cleaner, definitely in my opinion, on the new UI. Plus, the new UI stuff is accessible to you as a coder. There's some documentation on how to work with the new Qt-based UI stuff with your own game, which is definitely nice to see. So here we are in the new Lumberyard project. I'm going to go ahead and open up a level. So open level, open up my simple level. So this is a project that you create yourself. Nothing really magical going on here. Let's turn some of this informational stuff off. All right, so there we go. So here is our simple scene. Now, one of the new features that they've added here, again, added as a gem. So the big new feature here is the fact that it actually worked. Kudos to that, and we've come a long way with Lumberyard. So if you're one of the Lumberyard engineers I've been talking to in the past, good job. We've definitely come in the right direction here. So I'm going to create a new entity here. So there we go, entity 11. Boom, there it is. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and add the new component to it. And the new component, so you see here, it's a component-based game engine. All of the various different components are here, but since I added that gem, it's just going to show up as another component. So gems can just straight out extend the engine. And the new component here is a white box. Now, white boxing enables you, so we just created it. Let's go ahead and focus on that guy. So there we go. So here is our new white box. So there we go. All right, so let's move this guy up slightly. And it's just a cube in the world. Now I got snapping turned on. I don't think I want to. Let's turn snapping off for this example. All right, so it's just a cube, nothing too exciting. What whiteboxing basically is a way of quickly prototyping your levels. There's something like this built into, there's an edit mesh functionality that just added to Unreal, and Unity bought a plugin called Pro Builder, and that's how this functionality is added there. That's what this gem basically adds. So it's just a cube at this point in time. But you'll notice if I come in here and hit the edit button, now I'm in edit mode, and it's basically like a simple polygonal tool. So I could come here, I can grab a face like this guy right here, just hold on to it, and then I've extruded it out. Or I can hover over here, and I can find, oh, it didn't build me an edge. I think I have to hold down shift or something to get it to extrude. Control. Okay, I got to do control. So there I just did a control drag out. So let's grab this guy here. And so as I'm highlighting the face, you see, and then you can build it out. And what you can use for the tool like this is basically you can start like rapid prototyping. Let's control, do an extrude. Rapid prototyping levels. As you move to an edge, you can select just that edge. So then we can vault that guy up. Now what I've done is I've created impossible geometry here. And you're going to do that. It's a simple polygonal modeling tool, but what it allows you to do is just rapidly, prototype a level as you wish. The entire modeling process is pretty dynamic. So you hover over whatever it is, and then you can build it out, or you can hit Control and build it out with an extrude. So we can extrude there again. So these kind of tools allow you to basically start prototyping your level framework. And that's one of the big new features in Lumberyard 1.25. And I wanted to feature it specifically. So again, what I found in the past is when new features and functionality were added, they're generally added as gems. And then the minute you add a gem to your project, you're into the build system, and it is a nightmare. The big thing, the biggest part of 1.25 is by far and away the fact that that process actually worked first time. Now, it's not perfect. This engine takes quite a while to install, and the build process when you first build your game on this is a Razer Blade Advanced 2019 end of year model, so fairly new Intel CPU, 2070 GPU, decent amount of RAM and a SSD drive, and it took close to 2 hours to build that project for the first time once I added a gem. So just do be aware that there's still some issues there. And then another issue for sure. Here is my install of Amazon. This did not exist until yesterday, so this is basically a couple demo projects and Lumberyard installed itself. And let's go take a look at the size here. So we're definitely a huge step forward. If you want to check out Lumberyard and you've got a lot of free space available, do so. It's gonna take a lot of downloading, but really the installation process is quite simple now. But it still takes up 84 gigabytes of my computer. So again, to the Lumberyard engineers, bravo. This is by far and away your best release probably ever, and it's got me much more excited about working with the Lumberyard game engine, but hopefully we can get that install size down, maybe to 10% of what it currently is. But you know what? For most people, if you're working on game development, you get your one version down, you get it up and going. You only have to upgrade every 2 to 3 months when a new version is released, if at all. So, those things are more impactful to me because I have to, install this version, then I can install the next version, the next version. Whereas most people aren't going to have to constantly be upgrading their versions. But I still would prefer not to have 80 gigs of my hard drive eaten up by this engine. But this is the new white boxing feature. I really like it. By the way, you also can control at the vertex level, and you can scale and resize and all of that stuff too. So this new white boxing feature is a great way to quickly prototype your level. Once you're done, click done. You can export out your finished work as an OBJ file, which by the way, you can actually use this as a 3D modeler. Now, I don't know why you would install 85 gigs of game engine to get an OBJ modeler, but it is a nice experience. I really do like this new white boxing functionality. I really do like the new UI. Once again, if you do want to get access to it, all you do is when you first launch your Lumberyard editor, the welcome screen pops up. And then what you're going to want to do is just go ahead and enable UI 2.0. So that's kind of the high level functionality and features of 1.25. Again, by far and away, the biggest new feature here is the fact that it actually works out of the box. And again, to the Lumberyard team, bravo. Hopefully we keep improving in these kind of directions and more people will check out your editor and your engine as a result. And there's some really nice improvements here. I do like the brand new UI, some great stuff here. So what we got here is now the release notes for Lumberyard Beta 1.25. There's an updated starter game, brings you an updated sample project that uses best practices for script canvas, physics train, and more, plus the new character that we just looked at, Valina the astronaut. So again, we looked at some of really briefly, the script canvas setup for her. There's a lot more to it. Again, they've got script canvas controlling her animation states, things like physics train and so on are all been updated using best practices in that starter game example. That starter game is pretty robust. Definitely recommend starting there, which I guess it's well named. Again, we also have the new updated UI, makes it easier to navigate the editor and quickly iterate quickly in your projects. You will see new colors, new fonts, new font size, new styles, updated controls, and many other tweaks to the UI throughout the editor. New UI is more uniform aesthetic, a cohesive set of components and rules grounded in industry standard interaction patterns to ease onboarding, improve editor efficiency, and support the development of custom tools and interface extensions. Also improves support for the 4K and high DPI displays and multi-monitor setups. That's definitely a nice improvement there. We also have, again, the new white boxing tool. It is available as a gem, and the beautiful thing is you can add a gem and it actually works now without some hoop jumping or anything at all. We saw a white box tool in action, allows you to quickly mock up things, makes it so your designer can come in and just kind of quickly prototype levels. They implemented it very well, as you saw it in action earlier on. Script canvas functions are here. Script canvas now offers reusable graphs called functions. Graph functions that you create become available for use as nodes in other graphs. That's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, you can create script canvases that do something, an individual task, and you can share them and reuse them. It's basically a way of making modular script canvas code. If you've done any coding, you know what a function is. Basically, functions have come to script canvas, and that makes script canvas a whole lot more useful. And your organizational abilities with script canvas, you're not going to have as much spaghetti code as a result of that. And my video just crashed because I ran out of disk space. All right, so I'm back now. We're at the point where Lumberyard adds a new way to serialize source files. They also introduced the Landscape Canvas, a node-based tool for visualizing, authoring data for dynamic vegetation. Any content you have already authored for dynamic vegetation is backwards compatible. Landscape Canvas can automatically parse and build a graph for you. It is also built on the same graphical node library that Script Canvas uses, so it's got the same look and feel. On top of that, there are 120 plus bug fixes. Of course, I will link this down down below. We're not going to get into the release notes, but there are a ton of improvements in this release. Again, the UI 2.0 is definitely a nice feature here. You can see kind of the before and after effects of those updates. But the biggest thing, once again, is the fact that it actually worked out of the box. And of course, this new white box functionality, and the documentation for it is specifically available below. So if you want to see how to use it in action, to be honest, it's incredibly self-explanatory how you go about doing things, but you've got some more details available here. So in terms of how you can quickly prototype your level using this new white box gem. And the coolest thing is gems actually work. So you can go ahead and you can download it, create a new project, add a gem. As long as you got some time to wait for the build to finish, definitely a great new release. So Lumberyard team, kudos to you. I was sort of losing faith in this engine and covering this engine. This release really reaffirms my faith in it. There is a lot here to be excited about. Now, it is a crowded field. And I can't recommend Lumberyard to a beginner. That there's just no reason to go through that massive onboarding, install, footprint kind of scenario. There are other easier options out there, but for the people with a smallish studio or bigger, it's hard to beat the idea that it is a completely free professional AAA style engine that really took a giant leap forward with this version. It's just that much more usable. It actually works, and the UI is definitely a nice update. So to the Lumberyard team, kudos on this release, and I will be covering Lumberyard 1.26 as a result. So if you checked out Lumberyard in the past and you ran into some issues, I do highly recommend give it another shot, as if you can get over the fact it's going to be a huge install, and hopefully you have decent high speed. But that's it. Lumberyard 1.25, one of the best releases they've done in a very long time. All right, that's it. Talk to you all later. Goodbye.